simplify as much as possible, you have to break down the radicals first. So I take each term one at a time. 7w, the square root of 48y to the third power. Now I deal with the radical first, so I want to divide by the biggest number on this list that will work. So 40, 25, 16. 48 divided by 16 is 3. Now the number that you get after you divide goes underneath the radical. Because I divided by 16, whatever's out front stays out front, so that 4 comes in front of the radical, and I leave some spaces because I have some variables. Now for the y cubed, pretend like this is a 2 here because it's a square root. So what you want to do is, since this is an odd number, you leave 1 under the radical, and the one you take away, you take away. So then you divide by this index, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. That means I take 1y out. Now I also in the original problem had a 7 and a w out there in front, so you've got to multiply those together. So I got 28 wy times the square root of 3y. Okay, now the next term. It's a negative y, the square root of 75 y w squared. Okay, 75, you can do 75 divided by 25. So 75 divided by 25 is 3. Whatever you get after you divide goes under the radical. And then since I divided by 25, the 5 goes out front. Leave some space for your variables. This y is by itself. You have to have at least 2 to come out, so that doesn't come out. And this w, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so you can take 1 w out. Now you also had a y in the front originally, so you've got to put that in the front, and there was a negative sign. So that's going to become a negative 5wy times the square root of 3y. So now you just total up your wy square roots of 3y. So you're just dealing with the numbers, the coefficients in the very front. So 28 take away 5 is 23. And that one's finished. Okay, the next one. One term at a time. 8w, the square root of 27x to the 5th. So take care of the 27 first. We can divide by 9. So 27 divided by 9 is 3. The answer you get after you divided goes underneath the radical. Because I use the 9, the 3 out front goes out front. Leave some space for your variables. Okay, we had an odd number for the x's, so you're going to leave 1 x inside, which takes 1 away from this exponent. And then you divide by the index. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. That means you're going to take an x squared out. The original term had an 8w in the front as well. So put those in there. So you get 24wx squared times the square root of 3x. The next term is a negative. So I've got x squared times the square root of 12x w squared. Okay, 12. 12 divided by 4. Remember, you've got to divide by the biggest number on your list. 12 divided by 4 is 3. The 3 goes under the radical. Since I divided by 4, the 2 out front stays out front. The x doesn't have, it's just 1x, so it stays, anytime there's just one variable, it stays underneath. The w, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so I take out a w. And then the original problem also had an x squared. So that's a negative 2wx squared times the square root of 3x. Now you're just totaling the coefficients in the front. 24 take away 2 is 22. For v, the square root of 6x cubed. Okay, the only numbers smaller than 6 are 4 and 1, and neither one of those, well, 1 divides evenly, but it just gives you the same thing back, so you don't deal with that. So square root of 6 doesn't simplify. We do have, so that's going to stay underneath. We do have 3 x's, so you take 1 away because it's an odd number. That makes that a 2. So then you do 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we can take 1x out. So 4vx. And then we have a negative sign, and then we've got to deal with the x times the square root of 54xv squared. So 54 can be divided by 9. 54 divided by 9 is 6. So that goes underneath. And since you divided by 9, the 3 also goes out front. Leave the x underneath. And for the v, 2 divided by 2 is 1. So you can take 1v out. And you also had an x in the original problem. Okay, so we've got vx square root of 6x, and then 4 take away 3 is 1, and since it's a 1 you don't have to write it. Let me fix this v here. So that's actually the answer there. Y squared, the square root of 20 y u squared. Okay, 20. We could do 20 divided by 4. That equals 5. So that goes underneath the radical. And then we divide it by 4, so the 2 goes out front. Okay, the y that doesn't have an exponent stays inside. And then for the u, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we can take out 1u, and then we had a y squared and another 2. So that becomes 4u y squared square root of 5y. Okay, and then we had a plus sign. Okay, u and the square root of 45y to the 5th. 45 divided by 9 is 5. That goes under the radical. We divided by 9, so the 3 goes out front. Okay, you got 5 y's, so you've got to leave 1 inside because that's an odd exponent. That changes that to a 4. So 4 divided by 2, we can take a y squared out. And the original problem had a u, so you just leave that as well. So that's 3u y squared square root of 5y. So we've got u y squared square root of 5y, and 4 plus 3 is 7.